I never thought I'd be sharing this story online, but I need to get this off my chest. Maybe writing it all down will help me process everything that's happened. This is going to be a long one, so I'll break it into parts. It all started my senior year of high school. I was 18, counting down the days until graduation. That's when Ms. Winters joined our faculty mid-year as the new AP literature teacher. She was 28, with this captivating way of discussing books that made even the most disinterested students pay attention. Unlike the other teachers who seemed worn down by years of teenage attitudes, she had this spark, this passion for what she taught. I was already planning to major in English in college, so I stayed after class sometimes to discuss the reading assignments. Those conversations gradually became the highlight of my week. She treated me differently than the other students, like an equal, someone whose opinions actually mattered. Looking back, I can see how perfectly she crafted her approach. She never crossed any physical boundaries while I was her student, but there was always this undercurrent, this tension between us. She'd lean a little too close when looking at my essays, hold eye contact a little too long, laugh a little too warmly at my jokes. 2 weeks before graduation, she asked me to help her organize books in her classroom after school. The building was mostly empty. We were discussing The Great Gatsby when she suddenly went quiet. I remember exactly what she said next. "You know, after you graduate, I won't be your teacher anymore." I don't need to spell out what happened next. We agreed to keep everything secret until after graduation. She was risking her career, she told me. I felt special, chosen. I was too young and stupid to understand the power dynamics at play. After graduation, we started seeing each other secretly. She made me promise not to tell anyone until I'd been in college for at least a semester, to avoid any rumors that might get back to the school. I kept that promise. Our relationship existed in this bubble. Dinner at restaurants in neighboring towns, weekends at her apartment with the blinds drawn, careful plans to ensure no one from school would see us together. In college, I couldn't stop thinking about her. While other freshmen were having typical experiences, I was driving 2 hours every weekend to see her. My roommate thought I was just going home a lot. Looking back, I missed out on a lot of normal college experiences because I was caught up in what felt like this grand, forbidden romance. When I finally told my parents after that first semester, they were horrified. They saw what I couldn't a woman who had abused her position of trust. They threatened to report her to the school board. We had terrible fights about it. I was convinced they just didn't understand our love story. Eventually, I chose her over them, moving in with Ms. Winters, Elaine, after my freshman year and transferring to a local college. That's how our relationship began. I was so convinced we were special, different, the exception to the rule. It would take me 10 years to discover just how wrong I was. Thanks for all the comments on my first post. A lot of you pointed out red flags I was too blind to see at the time. You rewrite, but when you re-18 and someone you admire makes you feel special, rational thinking goes out the window. After I moved in with Elaine, our relationship rapidly accelerated. We got our own place, a small apartment closer to her school but far enough away that we wouldn't run into her students. She was meticulous about keeping our relationship separate from her professional life. At the time, I thought it was just about protecting her career. Now I understand it was about maintaining control of the narrative. I was taking classes at the local college, working part-time at a bookstore, and coming home to a woman who constantly reminded me how much she sacrificed to be with me. My parents had largely cut me off financially after our fight, so I was dependent on Elaine in many ways. She paid most of the bills, chose where we lived, decided when it was safe to tell people about us. Looking back, the isolation was insidious. I had few friends, limited contact with family, and my entire world increasingly revolved around her. 3 years into our relationship, when I was 21, Elaine suggested we get married. By then, enough time had passed that our origin story could be safely rewritten. We agreed on a new narrative. We met at a bookstore event after I graduated high school, reconnected when I was in college, and fallen in love. It was cleaner, safer. No one needed to know the truth, she said. The proposal wasn't romantic, more practical than anything. We love each other, we live together, it makes financial sense, she explained. I was just happy she wanted to make things official. I proposed properly a week later, with a ring I could barely afford from my bookstore salary. She seemed genuinely surprised and delighted. That moment felt real. We had a small wedding. My parents attended but remained distant and uncomfortable. Elaine's family was warm but unknowing. They believed the bookstore meeting story. Her colleagues from school came, except for the principal and vice principal, whom she intentionally didn't invite, to avoid any awkwardness. After we married, things were good for a while. I finished my degree, got a job at a publishing house, and started building a career. Elaine was proud of me, or at least, she seemed to be. She brag about my accomplishments to her friends, showing me off like I was her greatest success story. It made me feel good, even if something about it occasionally felt off. We bought a house in our 5th year together, a modest 3-bedroom in a nice neighborhood. Elaine wanted space for a home office and, maybe someday, a nursery. The idea of children came up occasionally, but she always had reasons to wait. Her career was at a crucial point. We needed more financial stability. The timing wasn't right. I didn't push it. By our 7th year together, we settled into a comfortable routine. I was 25, she was 35. The age gap mattered less as adults, and we mostly stopped thinking about how we met. Our revised history had become the truth we lived by. I had a few close friends by then, though Elaine rarely joined when we went out. She preferred hosting dinner parties where she could control the environment. One night after such a dinner party, when our guests, mostly her colleagues, had left, she kissed me and said, "You know what I love about you? You've grown into exactly the man I hoped you would be." Something about the way she said it struck me as odd, like I was a project she'd been cultivating. But I brushed it off, attributing my unease to too much wine. If there's one thing I learned from all this, it's that we humans have an incredible capacity to ignore warning signs when confronting them would upend our lives. I was happy, mostly. We had a nice home, good jobs, and what I believed was a loving marriage. Why rock the boat? The truth started unraveling in our 8th year together, though I wouldn't recognize it until much later. Elaine's school hired a new young teacher, Mark, who joined our social circle. The first time I saw them interact at a faculty party, something about their dynamic felt eerily familiar. The way she laughed at his jokes, touched his arm, leaned in when he spoke. It was subtle, but it triggered a distant memory of how she'd been with me. I dismissed it as paranoia. After all, Elaine was just naturally charming with everyone. That's what I told myself. Anyway, I appreciate all your support and insights on my previous posts. Many of you asked if I confronted Elaine about Mark. I didn't, not then. Instead, I watched and waited, telling myself I was being irrational. In retrospect, I was afraid of what I might discover if I pulled on that thread. Our 9th year of marriage marked a decade since we first met. Elaine suggested we celebrate with a trip to Paris, something we always talked about but never done. It was perfect. Spring in Paris, champagne on rooftop terraces, wandering through museums hand in hand. For those 2 weeks, all my doubts disappeared. This was the woman I loved, the life I'd chosen. The nagging concerns about Mark seemed absurd from across the Atlantic. When we returned home, Elaine was promoted to head of the English department. She was thrilled. It meant more money, more prestige, and importantly, her own office rather than sharing the teacher's lounge. I was genuinely happy for her. She worked hard for this, and I threw her a surprise party with colleagues and friends to celebrate. Mark was there, of course. While Elaine was busy with other guests, he had too much to drink and cornered me in the kitchen. You, a legend around school, he said, his words slightly slurred. What do you mean? I asked, tension immediately coiling in my stomach. He laughed. Oh, not by name. No one knows it, SU. But there's this story about Elaine and a former student. Teachers gossip, you know? He winked and walked away before I could respond. I stood there, glass in hand, feeling sick. All these years, I thought our secret was safe. The idea that I was an anonymous anecdote passed around the teachers' lounge made me feel hollow. Was that all I was to her? A story? A conquest? I didn't confront Elaine that night. Instead, I started paying closer attention to her interactions at school events. Noting how she engaged with male students who showed academic promise. Nothing inappropriate, nothing I could point to definitively, but there was a pattern. The same pattern she used with me. Special attention, subtle compliments, creating a sense of intellectual connection and understanding. I also began looking more critically at her past. Elaine rarely talked about her previous schools or why she moved to our district mid-year. I always assumed it was simply a better opportunity. Now I wondered if there was more to the story. One afternoon while Elaine was at a weekend conference, I found myself alone in our home office. Her laptop was there, usually password protected, but she left it open. I had never gone through her things before. We trusted each other, or so I thought. But Mark's drunken comments had planted a seed I couldn't uproot. I started with her email, searching my old high school's name. Nothing concerning appeared. I checked her cloud storage next, scanning folder names. Most were mundane. Lesson plans, budget spreadsheets, vacation photos. Then I noticed a folder simply labeled, Past. Inside were subfolders with initials. DM, JK, TS, and AL, my initials. My hands shook as I clicked on AL. Inside were photos of me from high school. Some I recognized, others clearly taken without my knowledge. Class discussions, me reading alone in the library, even one of me at a track meet. Nothing explicitly inappropriate, but the sheer volume was disturbing. There were also saved copies of my essays with her notes in the margins. Not just academic comments but personal observations. Shows remarkable emotional intelligence here. Responds well to praise, seeking approval, use this. It felt like I was going to be sick. But worse was yet to come. I opened the other initial folders. Each contained similar collections. Photos, academic work, notes. With trembling hands, I clicked on documents in each folder. In DM's folder, I found emails between Elaine and someone named David from 2010, 3 years before she met me. They referenced meetings outside of class, discussions about books, his college plans. The language was careful but intimate in a way that was hauntingly familiar. In JK's folder were text message screenshots from 2008, saved as images. James was apparently a student at her first teaching position. The messages followed the same progression I recognized from my own experience. Intellectual conversations gradually becoming more personal, more charged with unspoken meaning. TS seemed to be someone named Tyler from around 2015, which meant this had continued after she married me. The folder contained fewer items, as if it had been abandoned early. Had she pursued him while we were together? Had something scared her off? I sat there for hours, piecing together a pattern spanning more than 15 years. Elaine had done this at least 4 times that I could document, formed inappropriate relationships with male students, carefully groomed them, collected evidence of their interactions. What disturbed me most was how similar all the approaches were, like she had a playbook she refined with each new target. Was I just another entry in her collection? Had anything between us ever been real? I heard her car in the driveway and quickly closed everything, making sure to leave the computer exactly as I found it. When she walked in with a bright smile and a "Miss me," I somehow managed to respond normally, though it felt like my entire world had just imploded. That night as she slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling, tears silently streaming down my face. I had to decide what to do with this knowledge. How to confront the woman I built my life around, when I wasn't even sure who she really was anymore. After discovering those folders, I spent a week in a strange limbo, going through the motions of our marriage while internally falling apart. I checked the metadata on those photos as someone suggested, confirming they spanned nearly 15 years across 4 different schools. Some were dated just months before Elaine moved to my high school. Given the abrupt mid-year transfer, I finally had a plausible theory about why she left her previous position. I needed more information before confronting her. I reached out to an old classmate who now worked in HR for our school district and, under the guise of catching up over coffee, casually asked if she remembered why Ms. Winters had joined our school mid-year. "Oh, that was weird timing," she said. The official story was that she wanted to be closer to her sick mother, but there were rumors. Nothing concrete enough for HR records, but whispers about her being too close with a student at her previous school. That night, I did something I am not proud of. I waited until Elaine was asleep, used her fingerprint to unlock her phone, something I seen her password too many times to count, and searched her emails using keywords I suspected might yield results. I found correspondence with her former principal that referenced a mutual agreement to part ways and avoiding unnecessary scandal. Nothing explicitly mentioned a student, but the tone was tense, formal, and clearly involved some kind of negotiated departure. I also found an email draft to someone named David, apparently never sent, where she wrote, "I know you, hurt and angry, but please understand that exposing what happened between us will destroy my career and hurt you too. I am moving to a new district where we can both move on. This is best for everyone." That was enough. I couldn't live with the uncertainty anymore. The next day was Saturday. I asked Elaine if we could talk, and led her to the living room. My hands were shaking so badly I had to sit on them. "I know about the others," I said simply. Her face, I'll never forget it. Not shock or outrage, but a brief flash of calculation before settling into concerned confusion. "What others? What are you talking about?" "David, James, Tyler." I counted them off on my fingers. "And who knows how many more that didn't make it into your little collection." She stared at me, her expression hardening. "You went through my private files." Not denial, not confusion about who those people were. Just anger that I discovered them. "Yes," I admitted. "And I found the folders, the photos, the notes, everything, Elaine. I know what you did. What you've been doing for years. I know I wasn't the first student you groomed." She stood up abruptly. "Don't use that word. That's not what happened with us." "With us?" I echoed. "What about with them? Was it different with David? With James? With Tyler? The pattern looks exactly the same from where I am sitting." Something shifted in her then, like she realized denial wouldn't work. She sat back down, her posture completely transformed. Suddenly she looked smaller, vulnerable, her eyes welling with tears. "It was different with you," she whispered. "The others, they were mistakes. I was lonely, in a bad place. But with you, it was real. It is real." I wanted so badly to believe her. 10 years of my life were invested in this relationship. But the performance was too perfect, the shift too calculated. "When did it start with Tyler?" I asked. Her face fell. "Who? Tyler? T.S. The folder is dated 2015. We were married then, Elaine." She shook her head frantically. No, that wasn't what you think. He was just a promising student I was mentoring. Nothing happened, just like nothing happened with me while I was your student," I countered. "The photographs, the notes, they tell a different story." She broke down then, crying in earnest. "I need help," she admitted between sobs. "I know that. There's something wrong with me. But I love you. They always loved you. The others weren't like you." For a moment, I almost comforted her. That's how deep the conditioning went. She was in pain, so my instinct was to soothe her, even now. Instead, I stood up. I am staying at a hotel tonight, I said. I need to think. Her tears dried instantly. If you leave this house, don't bother coming back, she snapped, her voice cold and flat. And if you think about telling anyone about those files, remember that I have a decade of evidence that you've been complicit in keeping our relationship's origin a secret. Your publishing career would be over if people knew you married your teacher. The threat stunned me. This woman I loved for 10 years was now using our shared secret as a weapon against me. Are you threatening me? I asked incredulously. I am protecting myself, she replied. Like I always had to do. I walked out. That night in the hotel, I called my parents for the first time in years. They listened without judgment as I finally told them everything, including what I discovered. My father, an attorney, immediately outlined options for handling both the divorce and the ethical implications of Elaine's pattern of behavior. Get everything documented now, he advised. Once she realizes you're serious about leaving, things could get ugly fast. He was right. When I returned home the next day to gather some clothes, Elaine had changed the locks. When I called, she claimed she'd report me for breaking into her computer if I tried to enter her house again. The home we bought together, the life we built, she was already rewriting the narrative to exclude me. I filed for divorce the following Monday. What followed was 6 months of calculated warfare. Elaine hired an aggressive attorney who portrayed me as unstable, accused me of inventing the other students out of jealousy over her promotion, and argued that any photos on her computer were innocent teaching mementos that I misinterpreted. Without access to her computer again, I couldn't prove what I'd seen. She also made good on her threat, contacting my employer to express concern about my mental state. She didn't explicitly mention our history, but the implication was clear in her reference to my unhealthy fixation on her previous students. I was placed on paid leave pending a review. My parents helped me hire a private investigator who managed to locate David, now in his early 30s, married with a young child. After much hesitation, he agreed to meet me at a coffee shop 2 hours from where he lived. I never thought I'd talk about this with anyone, he said quietly, staring into his cup. Especially not with someone like you. Someone like me? Someone else she chose. He looked up, his expression a mix of pity and recognition. When did she find you? The conversation that followed was the most surreal experience of my life. 2 grown men comparing notes on how the same woman had systematically pursued them as teenagers. The parallels were uncanny. The after-school discussions about literature, the gradual boundary crossing, the way she made each of us feel uniquely understood. David had ended things after 6 months when he left for college, and Elaine had apparently not taken it well. His testimony changed everything in the divorce proceedings. After David's testimony, the tone of the divorce proceedings shifted dramatically. My attorney submitted his sworn statement detailing his relationship with Elaine when he was her student. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, ordered Elaine to produce her computer for forensic examination. The night before she was due to surrender her laptop, our house mysteriously caught fire. No one was injured. I was living in an apartment, and Elaine claimed to have been at a friend's house, but the fire conveniently originated in the home office. The fire investigator ruled it an electrical issue, though my attorney filed a motion suggesting evidence tampering. With the computer allegedly destroyed, we were back to testimonial evidence. My lawyer convinced the judge to allow us to subpoena Elaine's employment records from her previous schools. Meanwhile, David had reluctantly agreed to testify in person if necessary. 2 days before his scheduled court appearance, I received a call from Elaine's attorney suggesting a settlement meeting. It was the first indication that Elaine was worried. The settlement offer was straightforward. An even split of our assets, a non-disclosure agreement from both sides, and a clause specifically preventing me from contacting her previous or current employers about our relationship. In exchange, she would drop her counter-allegations about my mental stability and harassment of her former students. My father advised against accepting. They, rerunning scared, he said. Something else is in those employment records they don't want coming out. He was right. When the records finally arrived under court order, they included a sealed file from her second school with a confidential settlement agreement between the school district and a student's family. The agreement didn't name the student or detail the allegations, but the timing aligned perfectly with James K. from her folders. Faced with this evidence, Elaine's aggressive strategy collapsed. She agreed to a revised settlement that was heavily in my favor financially but still included mutual non-disclosure. I was prepared to sign when a new development changed everything. Tyler, the TS from the 2015 folder, found me through David. Apparently, David had reached out to warn him about potentially being called to testify. Tyler was now 25, just 3 years younger than I had been when I married Elaine. She didn't just groom students, he told me over the phone, his voice shaking. She collected us, compared us. It was like some twisted experiment to her. According to Tyler, Elaine had pursued him during our 3rd year of marriage, when he was her student at 17. Unlike with me or David, things had never become physical, but not for lack of trying on her part. What ended it was Tyler discovering a journal where she compared her projects, her word, not mine, analyzing our respective responses to her techniques, noting which approaches yielded the best results. There were at least 6 names in that journal, Tyler said. You were labeled her most successful acquisition. She wrote about you like you were a trophy. That conversation broke something in me that I am still trying to repair. I had spent 10 years believing I was special, that ours was a forbidden but genuine love story. Instead, I was just the specimen that had responded best to her conditioning. I refused to sign the settlement. Instead, I took everything, Tyler's statement, David's testimony, the employment records, to the district superintendent. I knew this would likely expose my own history with Elaine, potentially harming my career and reputation, but I couldn't stay silent knowing she was still teaching, still having access to vulnerable students. The meeting with the superintendent was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I laid out the entire history, including my own role in concealing the inappropriate origin of our relationship. To my surprise, the superintendent was less interested in judging me than in addressing the ongoing threat to students. Within 48 hours, Elaine was suspended pending investigation. When news broke, 2 more former students came forward with similar stories spanning her teaching career. The district launched a formal investigation, and the state teaching licensure board opened a case to potentially revoke her credentials. Our divorce was finalized during this investigation, with no non-disclosure agreement. I received the house, or rather, the insurance payout for it, most of our joint assets, and a clean break. Elaine countersued me for defamation but dropped it when her own journal was subpoenaed. Tyler had been telling the truth. As for the aftermath, Elaine lost her teaching license and, last I heard, moved across the country. I lost my job at the publishing house, not explicitly because of the scandal, but the timing made the connection obvious. My reputation in our community was complicated. Some saw me as a victim, others as complicit in protecting a predator for years. Both perspectives have truth to them. I spent the last year in therapy, working through the psychological impact of realizing my entire adult life was built on manipulation and lies. I reconnected with my parents, who have shown remarkable grace in not saying, "I told you so," at every opportunity. I am working at a small independent bookstore now, less prestigious than publishing, but the owners know my story and didn't judge me for it. The strangest development came 6 months after the divorce, when I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a handwritten letter from Elaine. "I know you think you destroyed me, but you only freed me. I never wanted to be a teacher anyway, it was just the perfect hunting ground. Now I can start fresh somewhere new, find a different pool of prospects. You were special, though. None of the others lasted as long as you did. I almost miss you." I turned the letter over to the police, but since it contained no explicit threats, they couldn't do much beyond documenting it. The postmark was from Arizona, but I have no idea if she's still there. Sometimes I wonder if she's found a new profession, a new hunting ground, as she called it. The thought keeps me up at night. How many lives has she shaped through manipulation? How many more will she affect? As for me, I am slowly rebuilding. Dating feels impossible. My trust is shattered, and explaining my past to potential partners is a minefield. But I am writing again, working on a novel about psychological manipulation and recovery. It's fiction, but the emotions are real. The most valuable thing I gained from this nightmare is perspective. When I look back at my 18-year-old self, I see a kid who was systematically targeted by someone who had perfected her approach through multiple practice runs. I stopped blaming that kid for not seeing through it. If there's any lesson here, it's that predators like Elaine Don't just groom their victims. They groom everyone around them, creating a perception so convincing that questioning it feels irrational. By the time I had doubts, I was already trapped in a reality she had carefully constructed. To those who followed this story and shared supportive comments, thank you. Writing this has been part of my healing process. To anyone in a relationship with concerning power dynamics, trust your instincts. The red flags I ignored were waving frantically from day one. Thank you for watching. Please support the channel. Thank you for watching this video to the end. The story you have just heard makes you think about some difficult questions in life. Do you think the protagonist could have noticed the warning signs earlier? What would you have done in his place? If you liked this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Click on the bell to get notified of new videos. Every week I publish new fascinating life stories that will not leave you indifferent. Also, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. What impressed you the most? Have you seen similar situations in real life? Your feedback is very important to me.